Welcome to the Six with 5 of us tonight. My name is Special K. We've got a huge lineup, so we couldn't even fit 6 into this. So let me introduce everyone around here, or actually let y'all introduce yourselves. Let's start right with Tammy from the Chamber of Commerce. Tammy, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you, Special K, and to the Dynamo Dash, thank you for the invitation tonight. My name is Tammy Wallace. I'm a co-founder and the president and CEO of the Greater Houston LGBT Chamber of Commerce.
All right. Now we also have Ricardo here from Equality, Texas. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys do.
Hi, my name is Ricardo Martinez. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Equality Texas, the largest statewide organization fully committed to realizing full lived equality for LGBTQ plus people, LGBTQ plus Texans. A little bit about myself. I grew up in New York City, was born in Mexico City, have traveled and spent a lot of time in different cities, including Chicago and Phoenix, and now I reside in Austin, Texas, and I'm in fully for the good fight for LGBTQ equality. Thanks for having me.
All right. Let's move on over to Lo. Lo and I go way back. Tell us all about who Lo is and what she does for this city of Houston.
What's up, everyone? My name is Lo Roberts. Pronouns they preferred, she accepted. I am the executive director for Pride Houston. I have been with the organization now for over 10 years, in this position that I have now for 2 years, and prior to that, president and CEO. I am very excited to be here tonight. My goal with Pride, as well with anything that is LGBTQIA plus specific, is to just ensure everyone that Pride is something that lives inside of us. It's something that happens 365 days out of the year, not just one day, not just a festival or parade, not just a month. It is something that happens every single day out of the year, and that there are several different organizations, both Pride Houston, as well as the Greater Houston LGBT Chamber and Equality Texas, that work every day out of the year to make sure that equality and equity is proficient year-round when it comes to queer people.
Well said. Thank you. And our very, very special guest today, of course, we had to involve one of our players from the Dash. Amanda, tell us about yourself.
Hey there. As you mentioned, my name is Amanda Dennis. I am currently in my 2nd season in the league here at the NWSL and then with Houston Dash. I attended school at Penn State Maine's campus, graduated there last May with a recreation park and tourism management major. Originally, I was born in San Diego and then grew up in Murrieta, California, which is in Riverside County, just above San Diego County. So super stoked to be here, have some awesome conversations, and really look forward to hearing everyone's stories.
Now, finally, there's like one football player that came out, but then they only let him onto a team for a couple months or even a year. I don't see the progress in male identified sports versus female sports. I personally, I feel like, and Amanda, maybe I'm going too far here, but I feel like females are a lot more accepting than their male counterparts when it comes to their team being out.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. I've always, everywhere that I've gone, every single team that I've gone to, I didn't come out until my freshman year of college. And it was very evident to me. I was in the middle of rural Pennsylvania. I think it obviously depends on the state that you're from. Everybody has different experiences geographically. And I was quite nervous coming here to Houston, just because I think Texas has a really bad rap as a state for obviously being fairly conservative. And I was just very curious what the environment was going to be like. But that's very true that it does depend on your gender. And so I've heard absolute horror stories of locker room talk, conversations even with fellow student athletes at Penn State, things that I just were social norms in my team environment, where people were celebrated for having girlfriends or wives or whatever it was. It just seemed like a very normal thing. And sometimes we get very washed. My first season obviously was last year during COVID, and didn't get to experience a lot with like the Dynamo side. So I can't really speak on their environment, but yeah, there is this toxic masculinity where people always are going to expect something from you. And as I always say, I like to think of it in a way of everybody's gay until proven straight to me. That's just kind of the way that I live, especially in a soccer environment. We are kind of one of the more gay sports in the country right now, up there maybe with like rugby or softball, kind of the stereotypical, or like basketball. And so it's just been a normal thing. And it really took a lot of self-education and listening and understanding. Like, it just shocked me when I heard this code blue language, because I've never personally experienced that type of hate and homophobia, and it's obviously awful. And I think that the more that people are making progress with having conversations, I think that's where we've seen some small progress on social media platforms, where people are really going out of their way to understand, because it's just been this masculine culture where we just don't talk about it. Let's not talk about it. It's just sports. We're just guys being dudes, and we're gonna, get sweaty and play our sport and win, and then it's game over.
You're not gonna look at my junk.
Exactly. Yeah. As if, yeah. And the predator comment is totally true. I mean, I've even asked people if they felt threatened by me in any way, because I don't know. I don't know their perspective, and we have to understand that I'm living my life as authentically as I can, but I need to understand how I'm impacting others. And so I'm very open with my teammates, saying, do I do anything that makes you uncomfortable by the way that I talk? And those are real things. Whether or not it's right or wrong is never the question that you should ask. It's just, how do you feel? What is your perspective?
And that's really nice that you do that. I think that's going above and beyond. But you touched on something there that really resonated with me, because I am from Delaware, not too far from where you went to college, and looking or even thinking about coming to college here, which is what my mom suggested, that I join the United States Merchant Marine Academy, but do it down here at Texas A&M. They have one there. I was like, oh no, because Texas has such a bad reputation, still does. We're going to get to that. And actually, I did end up leaving the academy because of, or partly because of, the bullying that I received from this masculine environment. All these people trying to become officers in the United States Merchant Marine. Well, once they figured out that I could dance, they just automatically assumed, rightly, that I'm into dudes. My life changed at that point when they started realizing, and it made my life very difficult. I ended up graduating University of Houston, go Cougs, and they were super cool about it. Inside the Beltway, inside the loop, things get cooler. Let's spread this across the panel here and go right with Ricardo. It's Equality Texas. How are we changing this mentality for the rest of the country as they look at us like these backwards homophobic a-holes?
Yeah, I mean, what I hang on to, right, when you're in this fight and you have to be in it every single day, standing tall to opposition, I think one of the things that I hold on to is that I know that based on research, 70% of Texans believe that discrimination against LGBTQ people is wrong, right? And so we have a fringe minority that happens to be really loud about their misunderstanding, I don't want to say hatred, of LGBTQ people, right? And so I think that Texas is named the friendship state for a reason, right? And I'm new to Texas. I got here as quickly as I could. And most of the people that I have met have been incredibly generous with both time and spirit and love and compassion and empathy. But you're right. I think that we're a state that is largely influential, and that we have a minority here that does really show up very loudly at the Capitol in opposition of LGBTQ equality, right? And so I think what we do is something that somebody mentioned, and I forgot who it was, but representation matters, right? And if you are able to live your life authentically, like Amanda said, and you're just low wherever you go, regardless, and you're not putting up a farce or you're being really authentic to yourself, and giving people an opportunity to get to know you, have a conversation with you, and deliberate, right? And have them have access to you. I think most people that have access to, or some or are able to know someone that they love or they like who just happens to be LGBTQ can change hearts and minds. And so the more that we could do to be, if possible, because I know that sometimes it's unsafe to do so, be visible and be courageous and stand proudly in your own individual power. That's the best thing that we can do at any given moment.
Before I kick it over to Lo, because I know she will tie this up in a very nice bow and make Houston very pretty. Tammy, let me ask you, being in the Chamber of Commerce, working with the business side of Houston, how does this resonate with you?
Well, I mean, what Ricardo was talking about, these issues, and both you and Amanda, I'm thinking about, you're both going, boy, should we move to Texas? What does this mean? And this reflection on what our state looks like right now, what our politics look like. And what that looks like for us when we think about this from an economic lens is that is bad for Texas. It's bad for our economy. It's certainly bad for the most vulnerable LGBTQ plus Texans. And so when we have anti-trans legislation, anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, this is what creates exactly what you both experienced, second thoughts about, should I move to Texas? And it should be the other way around. Absolutely, we should move to Texas because we have an open and welcoming environment. That being said, Houston is making strides. Mayor Turner recently included, LGBT certified businesses in City Houston contracting and procurement. But, we are largely looked at as a city that does not have a non-discrimination ordinance. So there is so much more work to do around this. But I will say, teams like the Dynamo Dash, the Rockets held a Pride Night, other teams like that is incredibly, incredibly positive in terms of economic development, the way we're perceived. And I think there's more opportunity when you look at what the sports teams are doing as we move forward.
And Lo, put some shine on this so that, anyone who's watching or listening understands that we are on the upswing here, and, the numbers and what Pride does really proves it.
So I always like to kind of reference, for those of you who don't know, in 2018, 2019, Pride applied for World Pride. And we were one of the 3 finalists for World Pride. And one of the things that I kind of had to always talk about when, selling Houston and telling people why it should be here in Houston is because a lot of people, and it's not just here in the States, it is all over the world. They see Texas as this big red state that, oh, there really are gay people that live there and you're Black. That was a lot of the feedback that I got during some of these conversations. And so I always, one of my directors that was on the committee with me said it perfectly. And I was like, that is such a weird statement, but I love it. She said, we in Houston, especially in some of these other larger cities in Texas, are like blueberries in tomato soup. Okay. And so what she meant by that was like, we are different. It's weird. It's awkward. It's sweet, but it makes a whole world of difference when it comes to this big red bowl of soup. And that's what I like to tell people too, when we're talking about it and we're bringing it to light, because there's a lot of things that have happened here in Houston. There's a bunch of diversity. We are the third largest Pride celebration in the country. We are top 20 in the world. So there's a lot going on right here in our own backyard. And I used to be one of those people where it's like, oh no, I'm just going to work behind the scenes. Like, nope, I don't need to be visible. Like before I became president and CEO, nobody knew who in the world I was. Like if I didn't work with you on a one-on-one basis, you didn't know who I was. And that's how I liked it. However, kind of stepping into that light, it has meant a world, because once you see someone that looks like you, like Ricardo said earlier, representation matters. Because now if you look at Pride, we're just going to be complete honesty. Before I became in the role that I was, it was cis white men. And that's how it was run. And you could see it not only from the outside looking in, but also when it came to a lot of things that went on behind the scenes. And when I say cis white men, I don't necessarily mean white men that were born and it says on the birth certificate. I mean somebody that passed and has the privilege to pass. And then once they saw me in that role, in that position, it's like, oh, that's sister. Okay, let me go ahead and step up. Let me go ahead and do this, that, and the other. And so I think that nowadays, especially, I know people are always talking noise about the millennials, but I'm just gonna say I'm gonna reach out to my millennials because we doing some things. Okay, now that millennials are really like we have spoken up. There's been a lot of times where people have not spoken up and they just kind of go with the flow and they kind of make do with what they're given. And it has been recent where we don't want to make do. We want certain privileges that other people have, and we have the right to have them. So we will speak up and we will make it happen. And I think that has, with that turn of events and with those millennials taking over, and Gen Z, I love them to death, but they even louder and more boisterous than us millennials, okay? They handle it a little different. But even with them coming in and speaking up and making those voices heard, Houston, especially Texas, like Ricardo said, is changing. I mean, come on, Georgia just flipped from red to blue, just this year, well, last year, but you get what I'm saying? So, I mean, there's so much change and you can't go off of history because you have to also look at what's happening right here and right now.
And there is legislation that's trying to hold back change. And I think I'd like Ricardo to speak on the legislation that I don't think quite made it through, the trans legislation. And then Amanda, I want you to relay any experiences you have even had with being on the field with the trans person. So Ricardo, can you kind of elaborate on the legislation that just, I believe it failed? Am I right in saying it failed?
It did. We have to wait for the very last minute. But it did fail. And it was essentially a sports ban, an anti-trans sports ban that essentially prohibited students from playing in a sport from the gender they identified, and because they were forcing students to play on a sports team that coincided with their birth certificate in or around the time of their birth. And as everyone knows, and I've repeated this countless times, any legislation which blocks transgender youth from normal school activities does nothing but send a message to bullies that it is okay to attack and humiliate transgender kids. And we see it play out in real time in Texas, how it trickles down directly to our schools.
Okay, Amanda, have you played on the field with a trans person, and have you thought to yourself, well, this is not fair? Or have you had any other teammates who have confided in you and maybe indicated that they felt like it wasn't a fair contest?
Personally, I haven't played with anyone who identified as trans. We do have one person in our league who does identify. They play for the OL Reign up in Seattle, or I guess Tacoma, Washington. And it really hasn't sparked a lot of huge conversation right now because I think there's a lot of heavy conversation with Black Lives Matter currently. And so, it's kind of like pick and choose your battle. So it is something that's definitely on the back burner. That is the number one question that I get when people find out that I'm gay and people find out that I play soccer. How would you feel about playing with trans athletes? It's like just this burning question that people are like, it's like playing with aliens. That's what people think it's like. And I'm like, they are human. I couldn't give a crap if anybody is on the team with me. If you can hang, soccer is a hard enough sport, especially at the highest level here in America that I play in for the women's side. If you can play, you can play. I honestly, personally couldn't care less. It obviously brings up a lot of issues more. Again, we're going back to the masculinity side of it. If a person was obviously born female, transitioned to a male, going into a male sport, it doesn't really cause that much of an issue currently, as much as what people think that someone who was born biologically a male who's transitioning into female, that is where people are struggling with, wow, all these testosterone levels and this, that, and the other. And honestly, I don't think that people are having enough conversations about it, because about asking the actual athletes, are you comfortable with it? It's science, it's unfair, it's the parents that are worried that their kid's going to get their spot taken. I'm like, you should be worried about every single other person that's not your kid. You know, a competition ranges with every single person that's out on that field, on the pitch, and the court, wherever it may be. No matter what, your kid's going to have to show up every single day and be the best that they can be. And that's just the reality of it. It shouldn't matter the gender. There's a reason that athletes don't get compared, men and women's athletes in general. So why, like, what, in the same level, like, nobody is going out to an NBA, court and directly comparing people to women's basketball, saying, you just can't physically do the same thing, but like, you're not going to be on the same environments. And so it's a very interesting, I don't have a ton of information on it. And I think that's the important thing, is to educate yourself. I find articles all the time trying to educate myself on it and hearing them out. I know someone who I really follow is they're a track athlete. I'm passing on their name right now. I can't think of it, but.
Is it Chris Mosier?
No. Sorry, it's escaping me right now. But I think it's really important to hear their experiences, because at the end of the day, they just want to play. They just want to get out there and run. They just want to get out there and compete. And it's like that human ability. That's why we love sports in this country. That competitive drive. Everybody wants to be out there. And you know what? If someone's better than me for any reason, male or female or anything in between, I couldn't care less. Like, I just got to be focused on myself. So many people are so projecting on to other people and about competing when they have self-securities on their own. And I think that's the biggest point that we need to look at.
Okay, Tammy, do you see with this anti-LGBT legislation coming through, every single season, do you feel that companies are genuinely apprehensive about coming to Texas, or is that just how they need to act?
No, they're absolutely apprehensive, and they're asking the questions, whether it's of the GHB, if they're looking at locating within the city or county, regionally. They're asking the questions. What are you doing in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion? How are you addressing this anti-LGBTQ legislation? We need more leadership in Houston that's stepping up to say no to anti-LGBTQ legislation, because it does hurt. Bringing new business to Texas, bringing new business to Houston. And so I think these companies, in many cases, they have a general checklist. And for years, that checklist was, education, workforce development, all of those pieces. And DEI and what cities are doing is absolutely at the top of the list when they are looking at scoring criteria. And we know we've lost businesses. We've lost businesses relocating to Houston and to the state because of our anti-LGBTQ climate, and now, voter suppression, all of these pieces of legislation. This is what is incredibly to grasp, that our state leaders that say that they want to support business and business opportunity and open up our state, yet actively attack Texans, legislative session after legislative session. It's not good for business, and it is certainly not good for vulnerable LGBTQ Texans who depend on our government to do the right things day in and day out. So we have to change that.
Lo, thinking of the power of pride and the power of the people that pride brings in, we love to come out and celebrate and party. Do you think it's possible to convert that energy into activism in creating more noise to our representatives? And if so, how do you think we can go about doing that?
Yes, most definitely. Something that I started once I became president and CEO is kind of giving our platform to individuals within the community who are knee deep when it comes to the activism and the advocacy, and letting them have that platform to kind of urge people, both at our actual celebration, whether that's our festival stage or at any of our special events. Another thing that I started with my board is kind of urging them to participate in other activities and other things that are going on around the city, so that we can be that extra voice and help where we can. If people follow us on social media and things of that nature, I've spoken at Commissioner's Court several times. I have taken my own dab at writing different things to our community leaders as well as those in office, because it's one thing to vote them in office, but it's another thing to hold them accountable for the things that they need to do in order to support us. Another thing that I've done is kind of reach out to other organizations who are strong and heavy when it comes to activism, and telling them, hey, we're here if you need us. Let us know when and where to show up, and we'll show up. And that's what I've been doing, showing up, going live, talking to people that follow us on our socials, and encouraging them and urging them to take a stand, because we have to every event that we have at Pride, I always tell people we party with a purpose. There is an actual purpose behind each and every event that we throw, whether it is genderless, where we are highlighting and showcasing trans, non-binary, non-gender conforming, asexual, intersexual individuals, or it is our Pride celebration where we are celebrating everyone as a whole. Every time we put on an event, we are partying with a purpose. So it's up to us and you to figure out what that purpose is and take a stand. So what are you going to do after this? Yeah, you're partying. Yeah, you're having fun. But what's the next step? And kind of continuing to urge what that next step is and where they need to go in order to fulfill that next step. And so that's something else that I've been also encouraging to our community leaders, whether they are queer community leaders or they are straight allies, especially when it comes to our sponsors. Because I know that's another question that people always ask. Well, Pride is so corporate. This is not corporate, because I have a list of criteria that each and every one of our sponsors have to meet before we accept you as a sponsor. We don't accept everybody. There's plenty of people that I have turned down and I said, no, thank you. Even though Pride is struggling for money. Thank you, but no, thank you. Because at the end of the day, I am not going to be your poster child so that you can say, oh, we're diverse, or, oh, we are prideful and we're celebrating everything. What else are you doing for the people that work for you? What else are you doing for this, that, and the other? And so using those platforms for good and making sure that everyone abides by a certain set of rules.
I love it. Holding your representatives, holding your sponsors responsible, making sure that they are legit and they are supporting our community. It's so great, for these companies to set an example. And as I look around the city, not only are we looking at our representatives, but you also mentioned our community leaders. And there's so many of us out there that work in so many different fields. Now, focusing on the sports side of it, Amanda, how do you feel like, how important is it, the representation that you bring to the field for young athletes who might be struggling with their own sexuality? Have you even maybe had a young athlete confide in you, say, hey, I don't know what to say, but you're my hero. I'm gay too.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting. I have been so focused on being a soccer player. That was my entire identity my whole life. I don't think that my gay side was really the side that I was really comfortable showing right away. But as I've grown into this role and had plenty of young girls and boys come up to me or reach out to me on social media, because that's a lot easier than talking to you directly after a game, which is totally okay. 100% support that. I respond to people all the time reaching out to me, just saying, I haven't had anyone personally come out to me, but just saying, hey, thank you for what you do. Thank you for being your authentic self. And sometimes it's uncomfortable to run around and be like, hey, I'm the gay soccer player. You don't, there's so much attention drawn onto that side. And you're like, okay, how much is too much? And so I think it is really important to take a stand and really understand that all the actions, the businesses that I support, like the t-shirts that I wear, every image is on me, whether I know it or not. And that's something that I really learned growing up, is that being an athlete for whatever reason is this niche celebrity and all eyes are on you all the time. And I think Pride is an incredible time. I love Pride Month. It's one of my favorite months because there's rainbow flags everywhere, and I just feel very included for 1 out of the 12 months of the year. And as much as it is a celebration, it's all about educating yourself. And so having events like this are really important to the community, and people are paying attention and people are watching, and this is what you want. People, when they're scrolling on social media, they want to see this stuff. They want to see people like us having these conversations and standing up and not just being gay and just keeping it to yourself. Like it's all about just being authentically who you are and showing everybody that hopefully someone like you is out there, and the representation is huge. And I think people do get confused a lot with the terminology. My mom still struggles with it. We have honest conversations on the regular where she works actually in the healthcare system in here in downtown Houston. And all the time she's like, this patient or this coworker came up to me and there's this new term. Like, what is this new term? I kind of call it the alphabet mafia. That's kind of what we seem like. We just keep adding terms, but people need terms and labels to make themselves feel comfortable and give the rest of the world a word to explain how they feel inside and who they are. And so constantly I'm trying to educate people around me that just don't understand. And sometimes I feel nervous talking about the trans community because I'm not trans, but they're brothers and sisters and siblings of our community, and we need to stand up and support them. And as much education as I can do as a gay individual, you know, in this alphabet mafia, I'm trying my best to constantly show up for them and be that voice, because I have this super rare and strange platform to be able to do that. And so it brings me so much joy, and I'd love that events like this continue to go on, because this is what I yearned for back in middle school when I didn't understand the things that I was feeling outside of being a soccer player and trying to explain it to everyone. And you know, it's an incredible month and in time, and very much about education and partying, but also recognizing history, kind of like Lo was talking about.
And I'm sure that you probably know other players who are gay, might not be comfortable with coming out yet, right? Tammy, do you ever come across some business leaders who you kind of wish, it's like you clocked them. You kind of wish like they would just step out there and represent for us, but you can't squeeze anyone out of the closet?
Yeah, you know, the reality is for the work that we're doing at the chamber, and we're trying to lift up LGBTQ plus and allied owned businesses that partner with us. And but we have a lot of LGBTQ owned businesses that they are closeted. I had a business owner that approached me. She overheard me talking about the chamber at a downtown hotel about a little over a year ago. And she said, tell me about the chamber. And so we talked about it. And she said, I heard about the certification, because we have a certification. If you're 51% or more LGBTQ owned, you can get certified. So we talked about all that. She was really enthusiastic. And then she just dropped her head and she said, well, I just can't come out. I just have too many conservative clients that if we did that, we would lose business. I would lose them in a heartbeat. And she mentioned churches and some things like that. And I saw the pain on her face, because here was an opportunity for her to connect with community, that intersection of business plus community that we that we offer at the chamber. And yet she couldn't step into that because of a real fear of losing income, losing, revenue for her business. And that's what we're trying to do at the chamber, is create a space and a place where business owners don't have to worry about working with clients that don't accept them for who they are and who they love. It's a matter of, oh, I absolutely want to work with you because of who you are and who you love and what you stand for. And we can work with clients and customers where our values align. We want to do more work for businesses like her. But I see it all the time for business owners. That fear of losing revenue is absolutely a real threat. And so that's why we're going to continue to do the work at the chamber. But it is a journey, as we all know. Coming out is a journey. And I often say coming out personally is one journey. Coming out as a business owner is an entirely different journey, depending on who you are and what you do and the clients or customers that you serve.
Right. It's not the first thing that you do when you introduce your business. hey, I'm a gay-owned ... Now, Ricardo, before we leave, is there any legislation coming up that we should be aware of and kind of in tune to, so that we can stay on top of our representatives, like Lo was saying, hold them accountable for what's coming our way and down the pipeline?
Yeah. So regular session is done, right? So for the 4.5 months that we ran through session from January to the end of May to Sine Die, we were able to, with a coalition of folks, defeat all of the anti-LGBTQ bills that were introduced this session, right? But we have a special session looming, right? I think the governor has made mention in a couple of interviews that potentially there's 2 sessions that are going to come up. So we don't know what's going to be on the call. We don't know if we're going to be prioritized. And so one of the things that is most tangible for anyone that's listening that wants to get involved is to call your state rep, to call your senators, and to just let them know that you do not support any anti-LGBTQ, anti-trans legislation. We have real problems and concerns to focus on, right? Every single session, I think we've mentioned this a couple of times, there are bills that are reintroduced and repackaged as emergency issues that are really just to win political points and to create a culture war, because we know that primaries are coming, elections are coming, and we're oftentimes used as a tool and a vehicle, right? And so what you need to do, what everybody needs to do, is really just get involved to that level. And if we do happen to be on the call for a special session, I would say, if you can, and I understand there's a tremendous amount of barriers and challenges to get to Austin, show up in whatever way you can, whether it's calling, whether it's emailing, whether it's doing both of those things, whether it's donating to the countless organizations that do this work, or actually coming to rally, to an event, to testify, to drop a card to Austin. We are here to help people navigate that journey, right? Because people are often afraid because they feel like they cannot be part of this process, but it is really simple when you have someone holding your hand. And Equality Texas is meant for that, right? To really hold you and to help move you from being conscious and knowledgeable about the issues to actually taking action, tangible mobilization that really helps to push LGBTQ equality.
And where can people get involved?
So if you go to equalitytexas.org, right on our homepage, there's a Get Involved link to session and all of our bill tracker and all of our resources to submit testimony, whether it's video testimony, written testimony, or to find out about events and to come to Austin with us.
Now, speaking of events and partying with a purpose, I want to end this with Lo and give us the down low about what is actually happening this month. And come on, girl, you got to give me some kind of little something about the parade and if it will actually happen in October when we all wanted to happen anyway.
Okay, so I will give a little something. I will not confirm any dates. However, there will be a celebration this year. We will have a parade and festival. We will have our month-long of events that we usually have leading up to the celebration. It will not happen in June. However, we do have several different pop-up events happening in June to kind of commemorate some of our staple events that we have during our month of Pride that we have going on. I can give you a little hint. Our month of Pride or season of Pride, you will get all that information on July 25th at our kickoff event.
You're just like Ryan Seacrest after the commercial break.
Yes, we have a lot of things in store for the community just to kind of build morale and let y'all know that we are still here. We have different things planned for y'all, and we're excited about it, especially when it comes to the theme, when it comes to our grand marshals, when it comes to a lot of the entertainment that we have and things that we have in store for you. So July 25th is our kickoff event at Pearl Bar, and we will give you all of that information.
All right, good enough. I will take it for now. Lo, Ricardo, Amanda, Tammy, thank you all for being a part of this 5 of 6 And thank you so much for all of your time tonight. It was great to meet all y'all. Cheers.